If I were a doctor, I'd be fearful. Doctors are going away. I foresee a time when you walk into a well-placed screen, put your palm on it.
Yes.
And it's going to say Kaufmann, Doug, born 1949, cholesterol 210, debit my credit card now for statin drugs. Hypertension, your blood pressure is 130, too high. Go on blood pressure lowering medicine. Hit the button to approve, $600 for our drugs. Then you walk in.
It's terrifying, but you're right, Dad. You're right.
Yeah.
No, that is 100% coming. Yeah.
I guarantee you.
What is up, guys? What's up, all my healthy friends? We're here today again with Mark Owens, Brett Edwards, and the man, the myth, the legend, my dad, Doug Kaufmann.
Thank you, Ed.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great.
Good.
Thank you.
To most people, I think watching, you probably don't need much of an introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit about you from a bio that I found. Doug Kaufmann enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1969 at 18 years old. He was trained by the Navy in emergency medicine and graduated from Hospital Corps A School in 1969. Goes on to list a bunch of other things. He was deployed to Vietnam in 1970, where he was attached to the U.S. Marines Corps as a medical liaison to the 1st Marine Division in combat. Goes on to say he was awarded the National Defense Medal, as well as the Combat Action Ribbon, a Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry, thank you, and 1 Bronze Star. Man,
wow.
You've done a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I got to tell you guys something embarrassing. We wanted to get a GI loan, a VA loan, on our home because it was like 2% interest 12 years ago. So I went to the VA and I said, hey, I want to get are you a veteran? I said, yeah. And they said, send us your DD-214. What's that? Well, that's a list of, what you did.
Discharge
that you were in the military.
papers.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Were you really there? And with it, 6 months later, it takes a long time to get it. They listed my combat action duty and the ribbons. Evan, I had no idea.
How funny.
And
you had no idea.
I had no idea that I won those.
Wow.
But I will tell you, Mark, I'm not the hero those depict.
Yeah,
the Marines.
Yeah.
We were only medical liaison. Every few hundred Marines, I'd go out on these camps with these Marines, and if they get hit, I'm there to load them on a helicopter and fix them up. The bravest people, the most loyal people I have ever seen in my life. Yeah. They earn that. Yeah. And because I was their corpsman, I got that. Well, I am not a brave guy.
Thank you for your service, first of all.
Oh,
what an incredible resume.
I do it again. I do it again.
But since Vietnam and since all of this has gone down, you've really immersed yourself in medicine and particularly fungus and how it pertains to health problems, more so than I think anybody really thinks. I think a lot of people, right, kind of think fungus and think, oh yeah, ringworm, yeast infections, a lot of that stuff, but they don't really athlete's foot, exactly. Yeah. But they don't really kind of see a connection with major things, diabetes, cancers, heart problems, everything, right? There's a very visible link to this, and you've done amazing at showing this for years and years and years, but there really is a connection there, right?
We've written 12 books on this. One of them is on diabetes. Yeah. Another one is cancer. There is an unquestionable, I've got to just implore you guys, when you have cancer and they want to do a biopsy on the breast, let them do it. Send some off to the cancer testing center, but make sure a piece of that biopsy, and they can split it, goes off to a mycology lab. Mycology is the study of fungus. Mm-hmm. If the laboratory tech is good, that's like saying if the doctor knows fungus. Laboratory techs, they learn candida and, but if they're good, they may see in that biopsy living proof of fungal DNA or fungal fragments in cancer. So much so that the Weizmann Institute in Israel, along with many medical schools here in the U.S., converged 2 years ago and found 35 different kinds of cancer. They tested, 100,000 cancer samples and found they had fragmented fungal DNA in the cancer tumors themselves.
Wow.
And yet today's oncologists don't even think that you're living in a moldy home, that you've been on lots of antibiotics, which are mold. They never put one and one together.
That's a good point. And it's probably a little bit jarring to hear, okay, you have cancer and there's a decent chance that this is caused or could have a fungal etiology, right? I would imagine anybody who would come to you and you tell them, hey, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I think that there might be a fungal etiology to it. What comes next? I mean, do you have to convince a doctor to, hey, like, can you do a blood sample, do a blood draw, find fungus that way? How do you go if a person does have a disease like this and if there is a fungal etiology, what comes next for them?
So I always tell people who have visited with me for years, decades, I worked in clinical nutrition with groups of doctors. That's what brought our family out from LA to Dallas. It was Dr. Weekly. I always tell people, look, I don't know, but it's worth a go. Let's go on this diet that starves fungi. And by the by, both cancer cells and fungal cells require carbohydrates, sugar, to grow. Coincidence? I don't know. But it's interesting. So we're going to starve your fungus. We're going to put you on antifungal drugs. The doctors would do that when they thought it was important. And within a month, people would come back and start saying, I got good news. My breast cancer markers were way down. Men would come in and say my PSA, which is a prostate, it's not, but we're told it's a prostate cancer test. My PSA level is now going down. So we got to scratching our heads, 30, 40 years ago and thinking, what do we got here? Would it blow you guys' mind to learn that even a non-treatable brain cancer, one of the most fatal brain cancers in the world, has been found by scientists, not me, to respond favorably to a drug that kills toenail fungus?
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
Because here's a doctor that proved this a few years ago. Evan and I watched this last night. Mark, this is your first opportunity to see this. But
will you load that, Brett? This one. Okay, watch this. This is interesting.
Glioblastoma is a common brain tumor. It's the most common cancer that you can get in the brain, and it remains a very lethal brain tumor. It's incurable. Being able to identify drugs that effectively reach the tumor and change outcome, prevent its progression, prolong survival is really quite critical. This study shows that there are compounds that can attack the metabolism of the tumor cell and as a consequence reduce the growth of the tumor cells, and hopefully this could be a therapeutic option. So we looked at a gene set that is altered as a consequence of the disrupted metabolism of the cancer cells in glioblastoma. We then used what's called an in silico drug screen approach, which essentially
You're going to have to put this in layman's terms when she's done.
Practice and see how we can repurpose them. According to the gene signature of these cancer cells, a number of compounds came out in our screen, and one of them that we know and investigated and proved that it impacts the metabolism of the cancer cells are the azoles. So it could be ketoconazole, posaconazole, etc. And these are typically used as antifungal agents. And the reason to pursue them again is because they have been in practice. We know that they cross the blood-brain barrier and do have an effect on brain pathology. To put it into perspective, there's very few drugs for glioblastoma, almost none, that are FDA or Health Canada approved outside of the traditional chemotherapies that we use. Being able to demonstrate that there is a drug or a compound that can actually have an impact to extend survival, prolong living with a glioblastoma by even a few months is quite impactful in the field.
Wow. So let me ask you this, Dad. That was 5 years ago. Is any of that put into place as standard medical protocol right now?
So, Evan, many stories have broken online that a toenail fungus drug called itraconazole, you and I call it Sporanox, is being used now to treat cancer, successfully treat cancer, like she was saying. To this day, I don't think it cures it. it can alter the metabolism of the cancer cell derogatorily. In other words, it'll hurt the metabolism of the cancer cell. And as she said, it will give a patient months, sometimes years more. When these new cancer drugs began coming out a few years ago, Mark, for $50,000 for, a few weeks of this drug, the benefit was it would give people what few of us have when we're dying, and that is time.
Okay.
These antifungal drugs are cheap. They're approved for toenail fungus. And even this neurosurgeon doesn't put one and one together. As bright as she is, she doesn't say, wait a minute, azole drugs treat skin fungus like ringworm and treats toenail fungus, like you said. And is there any link between brain cancer and fungus? She didn't go there, and I don't blame her. She'd have been let go probably if she did. I mean, doctors are not allowed to ask the important questions.
Well, so for the viewers, how do we come in contact with fungus? Like, why is it so bad, and how does it get into our system?
Yeah.
When Mom and I sold our home out the country, that we moved from California, and kids had grown, got married, we're living in this huge home on acreage, we began looking for homes, and we could afford a pretty good home in this little town. So the realtor took us out and showed us some homes. For some reason, realtors and school teachers seem to be immune to fungus bothering them, right? Because they're always in it. We began looking at homes, and one of them comes to mind. It was a little home that was very quaint, couple fireplaces, and it was on my drive to work. So from out in the country here to work. And it was nice. But the second we walked in, my wife didn't even go in. Mom wouldn't go in. She just said, whoa. Oh, and so I went in.
The smell?
Yeah, just mold. And I said, why is there still clothing here? And she said, well, they died in this home, one of them 6 months ago. And I said, no kidding. What'd they die of? Well, they both had cancer, And we obviously didn't buy that home. Yeah. But ironically, it sold. A few years later, I'm driving to work. There's an ambulance with a body.
Man, crazy.
With a body on it. So in answer to your question, that's a long way of saying, Mark, I think greater than 70% of homes in America have some mold contamination.
Okay.
They didn't when your parents were young.
Okay.
We used to open windows, let the air blow. We'd aerate homes. Today, because air conditioning is so expensive and heat is so expensive, man, we seal up windows and doors and don't let any. And once you spill a glass of water on your carpet, if it's got flooring or even cement underneath, it's only a matter of time till spores begin developing. And it might take 2 years. A wallpaper, if you think about it, is putting on wallboard wet and then the paper up. Moisture, that's what fungus wants. A lot of these fungi grow behind wallpaper. You can't see it. If you have kids, which all you guys do, you know that sometimes the bathtub overflows. Can't figure it out, but and you know that
just
right.
That happen, actually.
Yeah. And they put a little grout down at the bottom, a little sealant, but that doesn't stop fungus and moisture. Or if the ceiling in your home has ever leaked, and think about a basement that's underground, moisture. And so we just don't get it because years ago, you guys, when this came out, that indoor mold can wreck your health, I believe the insurance industry vehemently fought doctors saying mold could cause any problem. We have a friend.
Oh, that's an interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we have a friend who had a $100,000 little home out in the country here. He lived, his home was a little bit below the next door property, which had a lake. And when that lake flooded, you remember, in their house came all this water.
Yeah.
His wife began having terrible symptoms. So they got a mold inspector to come in, and this is 35 years ago or so. Sure enough, the house had mold growing all over. They spent over $100,000. The insurance company did.
More than the house.
More than the house is worth. Insurance companies are lobbyists. It's not going to take them long to begin convincing doctors that mold is no problem.
Which now you can't claim mold, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to have a
separate. We had an incident to where we had just moved into the house and the house was only 3 years old at the time. But like what you were saying, the it's like a smart home, like efficiency, right? So they spray foam the attic, the spray insulation, and we noticed like some gunk like growing in the air vents. And we're like, man, what is this? So we had another AC company come out, and they ran a camera through there, and they looked, and they said, well, it could be mold. It could be, I forget it was, mold, gunk, whatever it was.
Or bacteria or something.
That was growing in there, right?
Yeah.
It whatever it was, it looked scary. They said, well, the attic is so hot, there's no ventilation. So the ducts are sweating.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So you have all this moisture coming through the air ducts, and it's dark, and
And
there's
then
nowhere
all
to
of
go.
that's getting blown all over the house.
Yeah. So, anyways, well, we were like, well, how much is going to quote to like take all these air ducts out and vent the attic the proper way? And they quoted it, and so we tried to file, or file a claim, and they were like, nope, sorry, we can't touch this.
Wow.
And
we
therefore,
don't cover
Mark,
mold.
Most
crazy.
most physicians, pulmonary specialists, you'll be interviewing one pretty soon.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who learned from my teachings. Most pulmonologists just say, no, mold isn't a problem. So when your patient has a respiratory problem, you put them on antibiotics. Everybody goes on antibiotics. Bacteria is the problem, not mold. And as it turns out, just the opposite is in most often cases true. So that's one way.
Okay.
Inhalation. The biggest way, I think, when we see brain cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, prostate, something gets into our bloodstream. You heard her say that these drugs break the blood-brain barrier and go where the cancer is. Antibiotics, Alexander Fleming, 1928, he's a microbiologist. He's downstairs in a laboratory, and he puts a Petri dish out, puts a little agar, a little sugar on it to attract bacteria. So he sets a little plate out with some bacteria on it. He forgets to put the cover on. So he goes home. Yeah, he goes home and oh man, honey, I got to run back to the shop. I got to put the cover on. Goes back and the bacteria's gone. He thinks, what in the world? Well, somebody must have come and emptied out the bacteria. So he does it again, this time with the lid on, comes back the next day, the bacteria's there. Takes the lid off within 10 hours, bacteria's gone. Upstairs, orange peels, windows are open. They didn't have air conditioning. Windows are open. The air is dropping the mold penicillium onto his plate, and it's killing.
It's eradicating it. Wow.
It's a serendipitous discovery, one of the biggest. Antibiotics have helped many, but I contend they're hurting now just as much as they're helping, and I'll expound on that.
Well, they're
later.
handed out like they're candy almost.
That's
now,
it, and they're abused.
Yeah.
Pediatrics.
It doesn't make sense to take an antibiotic if you don't have a bacterial infection.
Exactly.
And yet we do. Guess where most were handed out in the last 5 years? To a viral infection called
Chimichanga.
Z-Pack.
Chimichanga.
He means chimichanga.
Oh, not did I say?
Chimichanga.
We don't know what that is, sir. We don't know what that is.
So in 45, Alexander Fleming wins the Nobel Prize in science for his discovery. Actually, it was God's discovery. It's a serendipitous discovery. Alex was just standing there, I'm sure he and St. Peter had a great talk at the gate. But in that conversation to the board, he states, do not overuse these. Or we
really?
will be,
Oh my goodness.
These can be overused because we finally had something believe me, in World War II, lives were saved out in the field because of
100%.
penicillin.
Oh, yeah. You had to have them.
But we finally had something in medicine that would cure.
So it
The
just starts
C
getting
word,
popular and handed out.
everybody goes
okay, so
on
that's
the
interesting.
antibiotic.
Yeah.
He says don't overuse it, right? Which nobody takes heed.
Yep.
We end up overusing it. We have issues. Same thing with like
Dwight Eisenhower, the military-industrial complex.
Exactly.
Beware of perpetual war.
Yep.
yeah, and
And look at us now.
George
Since he said that.
Exactly,
and
Brett.
George Washington was it that said don't what do you say? Don't create political parties.
I mean, probably.
Oh, was there?
Wasn't it?
There
let's
was
see.
a thing like that.
Look that up. I think it was.
No, I know what you're.
Because it would cause division or something like that. Or
Well,
Well, yeah, don't mess with the bull. You'll get the horns.
They're well dressed, yeah. Political parties.
Did not.
Washington is warning the American people in his September 17, 1796 farewell address against the negative impact that opposing political parties could have on a country.
You need to be unified.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's
I didn't know
So
that.
you have
Think
these
about-
creators that sit, or inventors or whatever.
Yeah,
like
who find
warning
this
you,
stuff, right?
and then we're like,
There is a lot of evidence, too, that George Washington, complete side note from Fungus, but that he was kind of like a monarch ruling the United States at the will of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, the kings and queens weren't, he was the sole decision maker. He was running the country, no doubt.
Right.
But he was still beholden to the checks and balances of the Constitution.
Because they want the country wanted him to be king, and he was like, no, we just came from that. No, and then also, by the way, don't have political parties. But anyways, that was interesting because you said that don't overuse them. Here we are.
And we are, admittedly, they're calling for antibiotic stewardship. They've been doing this 20 years. The Center for Disease Control says about 2 in 3 antibiotics are actually necessary. Dentists, an article came out a few years ago, 81% of the antibiotic prescriptions dentists give you aren't needed.
81%?
81%.
Wow.
19. What'd you get in school when you got a 19 on your paper? Right?
Well, I'll tell you this right here. I haven't been to a dentist in probably 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, man.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I learned from Doug.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, you
need to be
don't
show me
have
That smile.
something.
Show me that smile. Let's see.
look at
Hey, man, there you go.
Hey, I remember you telling me a long time ago, dude. If you're not in pain,
Yeah.
And you follow, you floss. When I was a
take care
kid,
of
we didn't have
yourself.
floss. Floss is something that came. Why didn't that come out? We use thread.
Well, that is the thing. And like I think if you're actually being proactive and taking steps to floss and to brush and to take care of yourself,
use common sense.
I mean, because I have no idea what kind of feedback I'm going to get from that, statement of like.
you got a good smile though, man.
The last time I went to the dentist, my teeth changed and not in a good way. He dug into my teeth.
Really?
I don't know what happened. I've got something in the back that he just completely cut into. Didn't tell me what it was.
That is so common. I hear that all the time. That's the other reason.
Yep.
I go because they're doing free cleanings, right?
Remember Kate?
A guy that works for
Free
me.
cleaning?
Oh, yeah.
Remember? You guys, there's no free lunches. There's no free cleanings.
Not in this world.
A new dentist opens up in this little town.
Yeah.
Has a sign out, free cleanings.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine went in there and she got her free cleaning. And of course, the doctor comes in after the free cleaning and found 4 cavities.
Yep.
This girl never had
That's
cavities.
what it was. That's
never
right.
had
Always.
cavities. And you know what she did, Mark? He wanted to fill them right there for $1,000.
Yeah,
with
the
mercury.
fraud that exists, and it's rare. Be careful. What Mark's telling you is be careful in medicine out there. We are vulnerable to people who believe that, to people who have the pharmaceutical industry in their minds constantly. So she said,
about that. Yeah.
I have to go to lunch with a friend right now, but I'll come back afterwards. She goes to her dentist. He looks in her mouth, says, "There's nothing."
He's like, I don't think you have 4
Be careful.
cavities.
Yeah.
But what? Talk about a fraud, man.
Dude,
Could you
I've-
imagine?
I'm telling you.
What a
I've
great
heard that
business
story
model.
So many times.
You got issues. You need to come back.
Either a fraud or a business model.
And
Fraud
you know
or
what?
brilliance.
It's something that they also do during the cleaning. And again, this is just my thoughts.
Yeah.
Based on stories that I've heard. No cavities, completely fine. Haven't been to the dentist in like 5 years. Go to the dentist, get a cleaning, and then 6 months later, like go back and you got a cavity now. What do they do during the?
I don't know.
Like they're doing a little
I don't know.
implant in there. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about
the chemical is doing something.
What about fluoride in the toothpaste?
Yeah.
And are
you
we
guys?
fluoride bad?
Yeah,
That's
Good?
a big deal,
fluoride
isn't it?
treatment for children. What are we thinking?
It drives
you
me
guys?
nuts. Yeah.
We're listening to the experts, right? Because we're too busy. Before there was the internet with libraries in it, that was one thing. When you kids were born, we had to study vaccinations because it was just routine. Everybody that's born 40 years ago gets six?
6 at that time.
Today,
5 maybe.
50, But
75, I think.
we had to study it. And you guys, that's no different from women in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and double odds going to an OBGYN for a checkup and the doctor saying, hey, good for you, healthy. And then writing 2 prescriptions, estrogen and progesterone. Well, you're getting along in years. You're going to need these for your libido, ladies, your man, and it's protect you from stroke and breast cancer. And then the Women's Health Initiative, which was abruptly terminated in the year 2002, was testing 67,000 women to see how well these well people pills, estrogen and progesterone, were working. They were actually contributing to stroke and contributing to breast cancer. The goal of the pharmaceutical industry is from womb to tomb to have you on their drugs, and they have salespeople, detail people. Detail people. The detail people often are doctors who graduated from medical school and said, I will honor those pharmacists and I'll put as many people on drugs as they mean well. These aren't arrogant or bad people. They better honor the pharmacists that taught them in their medical training. Today, by the way, all of a sudden women went off hormone replacement. You're kidding. They heard us, and all the doctors, you should have seen the OBGYNs. This was a joy for me to watch. But folks, today they have something new that well people take called a statin drug. Doug, your cholesterol is 210. Man, you could fall over any second with a heart attack. How do you know that, doctor? Well, we think. And so I'm going to put you on a statin drug. Well people medications. They're coming out like it's going out of style. I did a report yesterday on television. We no longer, if I were a doctor, I'd be fearful. Doctors are going away. I foresee a time when you walk into a well-placed screen, put your palm on it.
Yes.
And it's going to say, Kaufmann, Doug, born 1949, cholesterol 210. Debit my credit card now for statin drugs. Hypertension, your blood pressure is 130, too high. Go on blood pressure lowering medicine. Hit the button to approve, $600 for our drugs. Then you walk in.
Terrifying, but you're right, Dad. You're right. No, that is 100% coming.
Yeah, I guarantee you.
Oh God, that's crazy,
man.
You know, picking you up the other night at the airport. Yeah. I was driving home, and right down here, Brett, right off I-30, there's a big billboard. You can see it on the lakeside. It says GlaxoSmithKline. While you're sitting here in traffic, consider shingles. You're getting old. Shingles is a big deal. Herpes zoster. And then it says at the bottom, visit your pharmacist today. And I said, pharmacist? I thought doctors had to give you shots. You guys, pharmacists can now prescribe plenty of medicines without a doctor.
Yeah, that's weird. I didn't know that. That's really bizarre.
They can give your vaccinations.
Makes this whole thing just grow more and more and more.
Yeah, it does. It does.
That's that cartel mafia business model, dude. The soldiers on the streets.
Just let everybody start doing it.
You know, we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we started taping, but how it's interesting that a doctor may say, you know what? Yeah, you have high cholesterol. We need to keep an eye on this. Or you have like pre-diabetic symptoms. Let's keep an eye on this. Why is it always, for the most part, let's keep an eye on this instead of,
why don't you make a couple changes?
Why don't we counter why don't we know the cause? Yeah. And then counter the cause.
And then counter the cause.
Well, and then let's fix it before it gets there. But too many times it just, let's keep an eye on it, and then it turns into diabetes or whatever, cancer or whatever it may be. And then
one of the reasons I wanted to do this with you two is because I know how sharp both of you are. Brett comes along. He's just like you guys. Yeah. And I knew you would be interviewing the doctors you already have and some more coming in to sit down. These are the doctors, Mark, that will answer your question. These are the doctors that say, blood sugar 110. Listen, no doctor in his office says, did you just drink a 16-ounce Biggie size Slurpee? Yeah. No, take your blood. Of course not.
Of course not. We're talking about diet, right?
Someone with common sense, and I'm not saying doctors don't have common sense. I'm saying I feel sometimes they're manipulated by drug companies with money, pay to them to put you on drugs. And by the by, that's going on in medicine today. Ask your doctor, do you receive any money from any pharmaceutical company? Before I take this drug, just want to know.
Man, that would be a great one.
You're the other adult in the exam room. You're putting me, because my cholesterol is 205, you're putting me, can I ask you, does any drug, I mean, look, I love you. You've seen my kids, you've seen my husband, you've seen me. But do you receive any money from the drug organizations, any money for anything? And if he or she says no, you might then say, I don't want to take statin. I want to try niacin, vitamin B3. I'm going to try a walking 6 blocks. I'll start at 1 block, get up to 6 blocks. I'm going to have a physical first, see if the ticker is okay. I want to begin taking a daily multi with all the vitamin C and so forth. I'm going to change my diet and put cereals and breads away and pasta and see how that works first. So that's a really good thought.
So back to how we come in contact with the fungus. Inhalation.
Antibiotics,
and then what's
alcohol.
Alcohol.
Mm-hmm. And finally, no, Brett, don't
What
do
about
it.
what about just like foods in general?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
are there general foods we need to avoid?
in my opinion, this is where we publish so many articles. Fungus grows on, remember we used to call it sweet corn?
Yeah.
Fungus has to have sugar. Fungus thrive on sugar. The big deal today is wheat, and it doesn't matter. Fungus doesn't send a detective in, excuse me, are you whole wheat?
Yeah.
If it's whole wheat, so what? Whole wheat can colonize or be impregnated by these fungi.
And is that pretty common that happens with whole wheat?
Evan, this is such a good question. I subscribe to various newsletters, and some of these newsletters are agricultural newsletters, and sometimes they leak. We don't want cows to eat moldy corn and moldy wheat. So in Zimbabwe, we go through zeolite and other things, to prevent this from happening. But it seems that the U.S., North America, has a huge problem with these mycotoxins. And man, I capitalize on that. I make a copy of that article. We aren't talking about it here. Shh, don't talk about it.
Yeah.
The one mycotoxin that concerns me most that the FDA has said is perfectly safe. The European Union says we're not buying it from you and we're not using it.
That's interesting.
That is interesting right
is
there.
something called zearalenone. Fusarium mold makes a poison called zearalenone. It's estrogenic. We are putting it on tags, and farmers are duty bound with all calves to put this. Why? It does one thing really well. You do not sell a cow based on good looks or IQ. You sell it on how much meat is on that bone. Zearalenone, like antibiotics, are growth promoters, and they will get that cow in a few months really fat so they can take it to market. And yet, if you go on a website that I really like, bcpp.org, breastcancerpartners.org, and you type in zearalenone, the breast cancer lines, the precocious puberty we're now seeing in young girls and young boys. It's linked, you guys. It's linked.
So how does the fungus get on the wheat?
During the flood or drought, when the crop is damaged, fungus easily impregnates it. It will get on board, set itself up, begin a family. And some of these fungi deposit their poisons into that product.
Now, does this happen even if it's in a silo?
Oh, yeah. Mostly in a silo.
Yeah.
You look at Iowa and some of these, Kansas, beautiful states.
Sure.
And they got these silos all over the place. Unfortunately, what we experienced here in our little town of Dallas was a horrific rain the other day that blew sideways.
Yeah.
And the silos, you get some of that corn
it just
wet.
leaks a little bit
It
and then it
needs
gets wet.
moisture and it needs sugar.
Ooh, man,
Think
that's
human
scary.
body, antibiotics.
And you can't cook it out.
You
Can't boil it out, cook it out.
You can take pasta, break it in half, throw it in boiling water, and the fungus is dead. If it had already deposited its poisons into that pasta, you're eating them.
Which I'm sure in the U.S. it's and on top of everything else.
So
they spray. And
that was a
process
good
with,
question,
but,
Evan. Grains, cereal grains, you need to be very, very careful. If your children,
like
if you
all
have
grains,
health,
right? I mean-
grains, Evan, it just goes on and on and on.
But it's in grain-fed beef.
Yeah.
Too, and we got to get clear on that.
We eat
because
beef.
The carnivore diet's really huge, and what people need to understand is if the zearalenone's making it into the grain-fed beef and you're ingesting that, there is significant evidence that we're finding here that it decreases the amount of testosterone, it decreases the amount of sperm in men. It leads to the feminization of men.
Yeah. It's a spermicidal.
So the tags that go on the cow's ears, are those required even if that's a grass-fed animal?
No.
Okay.
No, there are farms.
So that's a
and
good distinction to make.
Sadly, they're not getting much help from the government. These little independent farms are disappearing. It's
yeah.
only
Well, they're like and also like the quacks of like the agriculture,
exactly.
right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah. And that's why you need to honor, if I can tell you,
expensive as it is, probably.
buy pasture raised from your local farm, give them all the support and money you can. It's possible to buy half or quarter of a grass-fed cow, keep it in a freezer in your garage for a period of time, and know that the omega fatty acids in that, as opposed to an antibiotic and zearalenone cow, diametric.
farmers markets. You can actually interact with them and talk to them and say, how was this? How was the crop? How was it processed?
Mark, one of the big gimmicks I see, you know the word natural? Everything.
Oh, yeah,
Everything's
right?
natural,
Everything's
right?
natural. Everything's
Natural flavors.
organic.
We were talking about natural flavors yesterday, Dad.
Or Berkeley.
It's it's harvested from beaver anal glands is what makes a natural flavor.
The raspberry flavor.
Oh, really? Only raspberry?
Particularly, yeah.
I thought it was vanilla.
Oh.
It does involve in vanilla.
Which I
too.
dig.
Vanilla and
Beaver
raspberry.
glands are cool.
I drink so much. Yeah, I mean, I drink vanilla flavored
beaver
things.
anal
You guys
glands,
hungry?
I could do that.
Could I offer some beaver anal glands?
Anybody like
It's really
beaver
the-
anal
Pull
glands?
that Liver King video up. Yeah, it's like beaver anal glands.
No, but the new buzzword is grass-fed.
Yeah.
Guys, be reasonable. All cows at some time in their life, when they're born, get up and take a bite of grass.
Yeah.
The honesty is grass finished.
Yeah.
Grass finished.
Right.
And it doesn't
Through
taste
and
as
through.
good.
Yeah, grass-fed means nothing.
Yeah, grass
finished.
finish is definitely a tougher meat. It's definitely a little bit chewier. Which honestly, I've been eating it. I think long enough now that I don't really mind it anymore.
I don't either.
But at first, it does taste different than a regular, more kind of
It's
fatty
rangy,
right
it's
now.
gamey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is.
Exactly.
It's,
Like venison.
Yeah, or
Right.
you know what's really good that I really enjoy is if you go to Costco and you can get American bison, ground American bison for $8
I'll
a
bet
pound.
that is good.
And we don't put them on antibiotics.
No,
we don't
no.
care if a goat or a buffalo,
Right.
they aren't agricultural, so we let them alone.
The wheat and the corn we talked about, are there companies that are actively testing for mycotoxins in those types of foods?
That's a good question.
It's a brilliant question. And I'll tell you why. Here are the facts. Not probably what you all want to hear, but here's the fact. Thus far, we have categorized between 75 and 80,000 fungi and know which ones make poisons called mycotoxins. We talked earlier, penicillium is the mold. The poison it makes is called penicillin. It has to be poison to kill tiny bacteria in tiny doses, if only we gave our children tiny doses. It's handed out like candy. But scientists today are saying, when I started in this field, we thought there were 200 species of fungi. Now they're saying 3 to 7 million. And we've categorized 75,000 of them. Man, there's a lot of them out there that might be making mycotoxins, causing cancer, causing brain dysfunction, causing hyperactivity and vision problems and bone
This
problems.
is a huge problem.
For everybody that's watching this, completely freaked out right now because I know that I am. Doug, walk us through how to maintain a healthy lifestyle and avoid certain things. Like if you're a healthy person and you don't have an illness, what's one lifestyle that you can live to avoid some of this, but then still have a little bit of balance? You know, I like my tequila every once in a while, right? Or a good burger. But if somebody has an ailment, and they're suffering and they need to figure it out, what do you recommend that lifestyle and diet look like?
I'm probably one of the few guys that has made it to my age, 75.
And you look great, by the way.
Thank you, who used to sit down with my own dad and take him to the doctor. And I remember sitting in one doctor's, dad had prostate, heart, every kind. Dad was a World War II guy, drank. A lot of World War II guys drank, smoked, Yeah. And I remember one doctor, cardiologist, sitting there thinking, man, I don't want to turn 50 or 60 because that's when the doctors start. And that's when the medications and all the surgeries, I'm just going to cut this off you. Let's keep an eye on that blood sugar and your cholesterol and your blood pressure. And so I said, I'm not going to do this. How do I avoid it? And I began to study a field that was remote back then. Today, it's fairly well known. It's called epigenetics. Yeah. Genetics says you are the hand you were dealt. Mom and dad's sperm and egg got together. That's me. Epigenetics says, Doug, go watch your dad and see how active he is and see what he's eating and watch his lifestyle. Dad was told he had cancer and lost his leg and his hip to cancer. So he was fairly active. He was a slim man, good shape. But once they started doing surgeries on him, he just fell apart. So I observed Dad and Mom. This was back when I got back from Vietnam. It was late 60s, early 70s when fast foods came out. And it was always chicken or hamburger, French fries, beer, etc. There was no physical activity for Dad, and I began to see him deteriorate, which means deterioration is defined as more medical visits.
Yeah.
More medical visits.
True.
And so I'm a guy who has had to learn, Mark, there is no book written on this, epigenetics. Epigenetics says you can change the sperm and egg by changing your lifestyle. I don't eat grains, rarely. And if I wouldn't eat a bowl of cereal, I don't eat pasta. I will miss pizza and pasta till the day that I die.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it in decades.
But that's discipline, though.
It is.
And that's what you got to do to stay healthy. Like
Evan,
you are.
Evan,
75 years old, you look great.
I feel great. And that's a weird thing. Will I at 80? Will I at 85? At some time, I'm probably going to need a medicine, probably going to need a doctor. I then decided I didn't want a doctor. I have a lot of friends who are doctors. You guys have met some of them. But I don't want to go to a doctor. I think my prostate's fine. Why do you need to feel it? Did your finger graduate from medical school? I'm asking all these odd questions.
That's a great one to the doctor.
I don't want to do that, and I don't get up 10 times a night and urinate. Having said that, doctors are telling male patients, you're up a couple times a night. You need a digital rectal exam and a PSA test. Have you ever had a baby boy? Have you ever changed his diaper in the morning? It weighs 7 pounds. He urinated all night. Does he have prostate problems? What are we teaching? Why are we so vulnerable to what we're being taught, guys? So I read a book called The Great Prostate Hoax, written by the doctor who, when I was in Vietnam, discovered the PSA. All I can tell you is, in my humble opinion, that test is the biggest fraud that was ever levied upon mankind. I have not had one. I won't ever have one. I don't think it's accurate, but I think it's selling huge numbers of procedures, biopsies, etc. But I won't go down that aisle. I stay away from interventions that I think are going to hurt me. Going to a doctor, he's going to take my blood pressure. I'm sitting on a metal table with no underwear on. I've been waiting 45 minutes. I'm mad. I just had a hamburger and French fries and a biggie-sized soda, and my blood pressure is at 180. And he's going to write me a prescription, I look at what's going on in medicine today is semi-nonsense. I'm telling you, brought it up. Pre-diabetes, what?
So, like, if you're taking, precautionary measures and you're active and you're following a good low-carb diet, you're healthy, you could throw in maybe a cheat meal every once in a while, right? But if you're sick and you're suffering from like a chronic illness,
something got you there, Mark.
Something got
you there.
To be disciplined.
You have to be disciplined.
Yeah, discipline.
You have to be overly disciplined at that point.
Well, we have to change and infect the culture, because a lot of people will go to the doctor and say, hey, just give me the drug because I still like going out. I still like doing the things.
Sure.
And until we infect a culture where they're like, no, I don't want seed oils. I don't want fried food that's been fried several times in the same oil in my kids' chicken fingers. Like the worst menus are the kids' menus. And then the adult menus they just hide the seed oils and everything else. And so until we affect a culture where they're like, we don't want that food, the restaurants are going to have to change.
Yeah.
Right? So it starts at the
bottom. That's a good point, though.
I wish I could tell this audience how long I've known you guys. Brett, a couple of years.
Yeah.
But you.
Yeah.
And
you know me a while.
A long, long time. They have children. By the way, some of the most beautiful children I've ever seen.
Craziest, too.
And these parents, the moms, are hounds. You're not going to eat that. It says sunflower.
Yeah.
Folks, my mom made us all eat margarine because butter was going to kill us with heart disease.
Oh my gosh.
It's insane what's going on, but everything rotates.
But we'll look back at this in the next 40 years and say, oh my God, I can't believe we would do that.
We ate
that
butter,
we do
right?
all the time right now. Anyways, I think you had touched on a big thing too. Avoiding alcohol, I think, is big. And this is certainly a problem that I think all of us, around our age mark, kind of, alcohol is like becomes so ingrained in the fabric of our social lives.
It's social, yeah.
You go out and you have a drink with friends and you loosen up a bit. It makes things more fun. It makes things a little bit easier. It gives you, fake confidence. Sure. On the outside, it sounds great, but I know you have avoided that for years and years and years. And I think to your health as well. I mean, again, 75, you look great, you're active.
Dad and Mom drank.
I know.
So I watched that behavior. Don't smoke. Don't drink. Berkeley came up to me when we were at your home the other day and said, Coco, why don't you drink alcohol?
Wow, cool.
I know.
Super cool.
And I said, no, I don't like the taste of it. You don't want to get deep, with a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
You guys, if I can commend the three of you as young men with amazing wives and amazing families, it's got to start with you three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before you blink, trust me, my audience knows this. Your audience does too. Before you blink, you'll be 70.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll be having children and they'll be passing that along. That's the way this works. Mm-hmm. You can't go to a doctor and hear this. He didn't get nutritional education. He didn't get mycology, the study of fungus. I think the most important germ is mycology. Delete from medical training. Lots of bacteria because there's hundreds of antibiotics. Lots of antiviral training because there's 100 antivirals on the market. None. Ooh, that's a new
break in half.
Nothing in mycology.
But when it comes to alcohol too, though, what we don't understand is that you look at the commercials as a kid. They look so cool. James Bond in a suit drinking a martini.
Of course.
Getting the girls. Parents in good times and bad times resort to the drink.
Yeah.
What are you having? What kind of juice are you having, Dad? I want that. Oh, it's an adult drink.
Yeah, thank you.
So as a kid, you go, oh, well, there's this elixir that changes the attitude of the adults in the room that I can't have till I'm an adult. And when I get to be an adult, that's what I'm going to do. And so it's ingrained in these children. And when you get up, like, I remember I had terrible issues with alcohol, and I remember not even wanting to do it and not being able to stop. Or I remember the day being difficult. Kids were difficult. At the end of the day, the kids go down to bed, and it's like, I just want a drink.
I deserve that drink.
It's like,
I had a tough day.
And then one for that, one led to the whole bottle for me. And next thing I know, it was 6 in the morning, and I was 2 hours of sleep, and the kids were up, and I'm self-loathing, hungover. It's a terrible.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, those captive commercials growing up when we were kids. Of course, they don't really play them anymore, but. Between Budweiser and the Marlboro, man, I couldn't wait to be 18.
Oh, you're man. You ain't kidding.
I'm going to drink a beer as I'm riding a horse smoking a cig.
So true, right?
I mean?
The Marlboro, man.
Let me ask this, because we had talked about this off camera earlier too, and this is going to sound very much like me holding on to this alcohol thing, but it's not. I do want to know this. We had talked about red wine and how it does have certain properties. Resveratrol being sort of this very potent antifungal. If you're going to cheat with alcohol, is red wine an option in your case?
You guys, I can go home now. You guys got this. I mean, you talking and Brett talking about,
we're the ones asking.
Right.
We don't got it yet.
Can I have a cheat day? Of course you can.
Yeah.
I heard you say something that the bulb went off in my brain. Cactuses aren't vulnerable to fungal growth.
Oh yeah, tequila, right? Yeah,
fermented.
Yeah, I thought that was
I used to tell Dr. Gottschalk's patients in California, they all drank, all of them, and I noticed their rhinitis, their sinus problems would get worse in the allergy clinic when they drank.
Yep.
They'd come in Monday for a shot. Monday's allergy shots were horrible because people drank on the weekend. Right. And so I'd talk about this. And I told him, if you must drink, tequila is, from a mycotoxin standpoint, probably the safest way to go. Red wine, I'm tempted. Sometimes Mom and I, you're sitting at the beach and looking out and other couples around you are drinking something relaxing. I know that alcohol is a yeast, sugar, fermented product.
Yeah. So right there,
Yeah.
it's, kind of like avoid.
But you're right.
But if you
There's
have to-
something in red alcohol. I told you guys about that experiment where they put mold on wine glasses and then poured a cup of white wine and a cup of red wine. And a few days later found that there was no more mold in the red wine. Probably one of its phytonutrients called resveratrol is responsible for that. But doctors don't know this. The Mediterranean diet is drink wine, drink wine, eat whole grains, and they love this diet. Doctors just love this diet because it restricts meat, and meat is killing them.
Meat's the bad one.
How I wish this was taught in medical training. But no, there was an article that came out 3 years ago. I spoke about it on TV and put up the graphics. There is no safe amount of alcohol, none.
Yeah.
And so that's what I followed.
Yeah.
And as you get older,
I
you
think that's a
guys,
good plan to
I
follow
need
that.
my brain to continue working.
Right.
Alcohol can retard, the areas of the brain. And so I just live a life that's diametric to what Dad made it to 79. I'm 75 with a whole host of health problems. And I hope I can make it longer. And I hope I'm still on. We just celebrated our 25th year on television. Oh, wow. I hope I can make it to 30 and see what happens.
Oh, man, I
but
think you will.
I'm following a diet. Sweating is really important. I know you guys, all three of you, sweat and work out hard. That's really important to get rid of some of the toxicants in your body. Psyllium hulls binds the old antibiotic mycotoxins from the gut. I think that, and it encourages regularity as we age. That's important. There are just things we can do in a health food store, like Brett saying resveratrol has helped him.
Yeah.
Like psyllium, like vitamin C, like, berberine and some of these others that are just so important. Basically, we have a choice. We go to doctors and start taking a lot of pills, or we go to health food stores and start taking a lot of pills. The choice is yours depending on the lifestyle you have chosen.
I think it's cool because I do think a lot of people now kind of our age and even younger are sort of catching on to the dangers of alcohol and sort of avoiding it in social places and everything. So I feel like people are starting to come around to that. Now, obviously, there's still more to go, and I don't think people are necessarily dialed into the message of fungus behind it, but that's certainly a driving factor. And the fact that people are cleaning it up a bit is nice too. So
I want to get your guys' input on this video. So it's interesting that we're talking about malnutrition a lot and the lack of development in children. This guy makes the case, Anthony Chafee, he's a big carnivore MD. He makes the case that if we ate meat the proper way it was supposed to be eaten, kids wouldn't need braces. Let's check this out.
Your jaw size, your tooth development are predominantly nutritional. So crooked teeth are not genetic. Crooked teeth are malnutrition, generally from vitamin K2. You can't get this from plants. So if you're not eating enough meat, it's fat soluble, so you're not eating enough fat. Most people are trimming the fat, they're eating very lean meat, and so you're not getting enough K2, among other things. You're not going to develop your teeth properly. So before the agricultural revolution, and in these native populations that are still eating just meat, they had big, wide jaws. They all had their wisdom teeth in. They had perfectly straight teeth. I mean, how many animals in the wild you see with crooked teeth? They have very uniform teeth throughout nature, and humans do too. K2, K1, D3, and calcium, all these things play a role in this. Most people are deficient in K2.
Interesting.
That's really powerful.
Isn't it?
And Brett, what was that other graphic that I sent?
Yes, let me pull
The
that
other, first of all, whoever wrote this has a redundancy problem. Medicine's Mahmoud Ghannoum explained why it's hard for bodies to fight off fungus.
That's probably AI writing it,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Now you know it's AI.
Man.
He's a friend of mine. Mahmoud Ghannoum is one of the most brilliant mycologists, I believe, in the country today. There's one in India I really like, and there's Dr. Ghannoum. A mycologist is someone, they're not MDs. You can't earn an MD in fungus. That's one of the problems. Wow. So your sharpest mycologists are PhDs, and what can't they do? Practice medicine. They can't see patients. So it's set up perfect.
Yeah.
They study mushrooms and so forth. But here's a doctor, Dr. Ghannoum, who really delves in to what's going on. And he found a few years ago that Crohn's disease, now you go to a doctor with Crohn's disease, you're all going on antibiotics.
Right.
Why? he discovered that bacteria and fungus, these are called co-contaminants, grew in the intestine. So when we put people just on an antibiotic, it kills the good bacteria, enables the yeast and the fungus to even go crazier. So they recommend antifungal and antibiotics. They do. Do doctors do it? No. They learn from pharmacists during their medical training that antibiotics were prescribed, by the by, for chronic sinusitis.
What would be a good supplement for somebody who wants to attack both bacteria and fungus?
Olive leaf extract.
Olive leaf is a good one.
There are good oregano. There are good multiple system helpers and multiple pathogen killers. Spinach, broccoli. I mean, it's just cruciferous. It's named crucifix for a reason. Do you remember in Genesis? Genesis, what is it, 1:11? I will give you every green plant with seed of like kind. Every fruit with seed. So there goes GMOs.
Right.
Why don't we make GMOs? The Bible says not to, you know.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just so shocking to me. But there are good supplements that they don't care if it's bacteria, virus, beta-glucan.
Yeah, right. They're just going after all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you want. Okay, so watch this. This was kind of along the lines of what Brett just showed, but I thought this was insanely interesting. Here, watch this.
Wild book called Jaws, A Hidden Epidemic by colleagues of mine at Stanford, and they have these twin studies. One kid grows up in a culture where they eat a lot of soft food, drinking Capri Sun, eating applesauce, baby food. The other one is, got stuck in the jungle or wherever it is, and they're chewing on bones and chewing their food. And one kid, these are identical twins, has beautiful jaw structure and high cheekbones, and the eyes look nice and clear. The other kid is like droopy.
These are identical twins.
One looks like in their mouth breathing. They show this. There's one case of this young girl.
That is just cool.
Twins. Yeah.
We got to chew. I mean,
What?
Wild, right? Isn't that crazy?
Dude.
Well, I've seen, I mean, even like
Chew that
Rex,
meat,
like,
bro.
The more meat that he eats, like I can tell his jaw just
But it's
lines
also
up and gets so much stronger.
in the vitamins that are bioavailable that
Sure.
you can't get.
like he said, K2, D3, cholecalciferol. You guys remember the entire medical community believes meat is bad.
I know.
So in other words, what's good is bad. You know, but they don't understand. They don't understand this zearalenone, this mycotoxins. They don't understand antibiotics being used, but they do follow the studies, and they're true. People who eat a lot of meat do have more gut, coronary problems, et cetera. Why?
It's the wrong meat.
It's not.
It's the wrong meat,
the
right?
meat.
Yeah.
It's not.
it's
I cannot
process
get
of the
doctors
meat.
to listen to this.
Goodness. Chew that meat.
Chew that meat, son.
Chew that
That's
cut.
it. Chew that.
Yeah, exactly.
Get them jaws.
Man,
in,
I know. I
dude.
thought that was interesting. The jaw thing.
That
I mean,
is-
we are kind of. I mean, kids now do want just applesauce and smoothies and like all this kind, like mashed potatoes and everything. There's not a
I'm
lot
gonna
of
give my
foods.
kids a tomahawk. Just throw
Right.
it on the
No,
table.
Bone.
well, that's
Tell
exactly
them
the
to
thing.
chew this.
There doesn't seem to
Y'all
be
fight
when
over
you
it.
go out to like restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they eating? They're eating macaroni and cheese,
Mashed
there's, like,
potatoes.
mashed
Yeah.
potatoes
French
on the
fries.
menu, fries. Yeah, very soft, easy
No.
foods. You want them to be eating, harder.
You and I
things.
had,
Like, I love how he was talking about the bone thing.
Yes,
Like,
this-
I was like, man, that's kind of awesome.
You and I had an avocado and a grass-finished steak the other night.
And I felt
I could eat that way.
incredible.
Yeah.
Is the carnivore diet the way to go? Once again, I want to go back to Genesis 1:11. I give you plants; those are yours for nutrition. So, I like, and the Kaufmann diet is kind of centered around that theme. Also, is eat eggs, and I don't like penned up hens, chickens. I like them out running, eating bugs, eating weeds, and laying eggs.
Will you give us an overview on the Kaufmann diet?
Yeah, the Kaufmann diet, it became imperative once I understood that fungi parasitize man. This is probably back in 1972 when I had all these health problems. So most doctors today think parasites are flukes, worms, tapeworms, etc. Most parasites, I believe, are not, malaria, Anopheles mosquito do. They're fungus. Some of these fungi off-gas poisons into your body, and over a period of time, it affects the brain, the blood, the bones. They can get into any human tissue. When I began to put together a diet then that would starve, I was the first person, I think, of the 20th century who thought we've got to starve. You don't starve bacteria. Doctor doesn't say take this antibiotic and don't eat baloney, just take this antibiotic and drink. And, no, that's not true. With antibiotics, 2 molds. They tell you not to drink.
Yeah.
Figure that out. Viruses, there wasn't any special diet during
Chimichanga.
Chimichanga.
And yet with fungus, guys, you can go to a doctor and go on a toenail fungus, and they'll tell you for 8 months or a year, an antifungal drug called Sporanox or Lamisil or one of the many. But none of them will tell you, look, take the carbs out of your diet and watch how fast this pill works. If you want to successfully defeat fungus, number one, know that the way God set it up, you will never. The human cell and the yeast cell, these are single-celled fungi, are called eukaryotes. That means they have an intact, thick membrane and a nucleus with DNA in it, both fungus and human cells. So to kill this perfectly with a pharmaceutical is going to be to kill this perfectly with a pharmaceutical. Wow. We have to learn how to subdue our symptoms once we get into inhaling a lot of mold or taking a lot of antibiotics or drinking a lot of alcohol or eating cereals, et cetera. And the way you do that is really kind of twofold. Many, if not most, supplements on the market today have antifungal properties. And then food wasn't put here to hurt you. If you started today with a spoon, it would take you to dig a 6-foot hole. It would take you probably 30, 40 years to dig a 6-foot hole that you'll lie in when you die. Conversely, you can use that food to begin eating the right food, not the wrong food. And then you may not need to dig that 6-foot grave so early.
So what's a typical day of meals look like for you? Do you eat breakfast?
Yeah, I had a grapefruit. I'll eat a grapefruit or eggs. Today I had eggs and an avocado.
Yeah.
I've gone out with guys my age, and I just, they always want to talk to me about health problems they're having. And I've been blessed, I know that, with good health. But then I've talked to several of them who are very close, some of them, and said, you may not want to eat the potatoes and, what you're eating. That kind of, I've talked to the heart doctor and he says that's okay. Of course, I would say that's okay. I'd say double up on your potatoes if I'm your heart doctor. It's I live a different life. The workout schedule, my diet, I love a cup of Joe in the morning. I love tea. I have a cup of tea every day. It's different. I drink a lot of water, which encourages urination, which I think helps the prostate and the urinary tract. Yeah. I love my supplements. I am duty-bound to beta-glucan and to probiotics. Those two, I think, at a minimum, you should be taking every day. And then I love a multi with B vitamins in it. We're finding so many of these B vitamins are antimicrobial.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Man, I love that on the diet also. Like every food on it was so meticulously thought after, even down to like using green apples instead of red because of, is it the malic acid?
Yeah,
that's in them? Yeah,
exactly. I'm sitting in, I think this audience would appreciate this. I'm an old guy. I'm sitting 1971 thinking, oh my gosh, that book on parasitology I picked up at the library said that fungi parasitize man, and they eat. They must have carbohydrates. So sitting there is a Woman's Day magazine in a barbershop in L.A. circa 1972, and the magazine was probably 1948. And on the cover it had a green apple and a red apple, and it said red apples are delicious and they have more fructose. They have more sugar in them. So I thought, okay, and I didn't know at the time, but I said, I'm worried about making the Kaufmann diet so restrictive that people, back then I'm told you have to eat grains. If you don't eat grains, you're going to die, know. And as it turns out, the immature green apples are loaded with apple cider, malic acid, apple cider vinegar, an antifungal. If you're broke, get a bottle of the antifungal supplement, apple cider vinegar. Put a teaspoon in a glass of water a couple times a day. Yeah. And that will help ward off the fungus. Really it's all out there. And I didn't know, Evan, as I go on in life, I realize that everything I chose on there, broccoli, I think is a superfood. Everything I chose on there 50 years later has a purpose.
Yeah. Wow. Man, it's always awesome to have you on, Dad. It's always so much info. a lot to catch, but really, really like genuinely great things. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you guys.
And can we put the links to any of the books in the description? Can people
let
buy
them,
those?
Sure.
Yeah.
Know the Cause.
KnowTheCause.com, Know the Cause on Instagram, Know the Cause with Doug Kaufmann on Facebook. If you guys don't already, probably most of you do. Check it out for sure. Man, again, thank you. Love you.
Love you too.
Awesome stuff as always.
Favorite Bible verse? Do you have one?
Ooh.
One come to mind? Favorite Bible verse?
Immediately. Leviticus, 14:33. Then the Lord told Moses and his brother Aaron, this is the land I'm giving you. But if I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land, you must tell the high priest. Why was this mold so dangerous? The reference at the bottom of my Bible, mildew was a fungus that could spread rapidly and cause disease. No medical book says that, but the Bible does. Which shall we choose?
Why do you think God said, if I put it?
Right.
Why do you think God would do that?
I think as a lesson, as a teaching, there will be germs out there. Leprosy is a fungal,
I always think that it's interesting how fungus in the Bible is always akin to sin.
Right.
It's always, even on Passover, it's like you avoid certain things, right? Isn't that the idea behind like the unleavened bread?
Yes, Evan,
you're taking sin out of your own life at home.
In the books of Moses, in the Old Testament, there are 30 references, derogatory references. Don't be like the yeast of the Pharisees in the Word of God. And it isn't in medical books. Everything in medical books is bacteria, virus, protozoa. Nothing. Yeast can cause a little vaginal itching, a little ringworm, a little toenail, but nothing that it can induce the number of deaths. Medical journals now say about 3.8 million people annually are killed by fungus. Why aren't medical schools covering that? Why aren't medical books addressing that?
What's interesting about that Bible verse too is if, mold's so harmful to us, the one thing about the mold in our house, it comes about because of neglect. Right?
Good point.
Good point. Because and that's human that's human nature to be lazy.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's a way of saying like Jordan Peterson says, get your house in order.
Yeah.
Right? How many times did you walk past that moldy shower and yet the hot steam just brings it up into your face?
Right.
Right. Right.
Oh, yeah. Breathing it in.
I'm just in there real
day.
quick. I'm not going to clean the shower. I wonder if there's a connection there where it's like,
Or maybe it's deeper in that, Brett. Maybe it's our doctors telling us mold in shower. That's not causing your headaches.
Right.
You need Furanol. You need to take a shot in your leg to get rid of that headache. If our doctors don't know, but our God does, where does that put our doctors?
Who are you listening to?
Right.
That's the other thing, right? Wow, man. Dad.
What a show.
Such great
Love
stuff.
you guys.
What a show.
This is fun. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Really an honor.
If you guys like this, please subscribe to the channel. Please share this video around. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.